Hi everyone, this is Hector Torres.
It's coffee
Coffee time.
time.
Hi everyone, this is Hector Torres with Tri-Peak Athlete. I would like to welcome you to Coffee Time, in which it is a podcast just to get every triathlete, cyclist, swimmer, runner, anyone who is involved within the multi-sport, what to get moving, how to get started, talk about all those different great topics. And I got to tell you, today I have a great pleasure to have Miss Jan McDonald. Jan McDonald, hi Jan.
Hi, everyone.
So glad you were able to come by, spend some time, your time. Because I know, girl, you got a lot of stuff on your plate and you just graduated from school. You did a lot of stuff this past year. So, Jan, I want people to get to know you a little bit. All right. So talk to me. What got you into the triathlon sport?
Sure. I'm an ambassador with Athletic Beer Company, and Athletic Beer Company had an acquisition regarding who wants to join Team Athletic. Because they were major sponsors for Ironman races. And I said to myself, hey, this is a great challenge. I want to see if I'm capable of doing it. So I went and applied, got in, and made a promise with God that if I got in, I'm going to go full out because at that time, I was an obstacle course race athlete. So I have no experience in triathlon at all, much less didn't know how to swim, didn't even have a bike. I didn't have any endurance. And so it was just great coming in into triathlon and trying something completely new, have nothing, and I have no experience at all, and really diving into a sport and falling in love with it, actually.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool. And I got to tell you, I being your first coach in triathlon and seeing how much you've grown within the sport, because I got to tell her, I'm like, she started like from nothing. Like swimming was like, oh my God, she is going to drown and she's not going to make it to the other side. So I was like, oh my God, this is not going to go well. But you did it, girl. You did it, and it was awesome. So, um, let's talk a little bit about you did your first race. That was some
Mhm.
environment that you couldn't finish. But then you just says, you know what, this is not going to stop me. I'm like,
Oh,
you,
yeah, no. I put in so much time to try to prep for my very first triathlon race, which happens to be a half Ironman in Oceanside. So,
hold on. She came to me on January. Okay, January. And when was this competition?
March.
No, no, it was April. The
Oh,
beginning.
April, yes,
Yes.
April.
So, and she's like, I'm going to take a challenge and I'm going to do this. I'm like, girl, do you know what you're talking about? And she's like, I'm going to make it happen. I was like, all right, well, let's get to it. Ugh, it was awful. I'm like, she pushed through it. So talk to me. So how was that journey? Especially because, talk to me, what happened on race day?
During race day, it was very interesting. The weather was really cold, and the water was in the 50s.
Oh,
And there was
that's,
also really huge waves along the way.
which
So
was this? This was Oceanside, right?
yes,
Yeah, Oceanside.
Oceanside, California. Um, so I was really way above over my head in terms
Hmm.
of using that as my very first triathlon race ever. Um, yeah, it was difficult. There was a lot of time I was praying to God to see how I'm going to conquer this, and I made promise to God actually that if I made it through, I'm just gonna keep going until and just leave it out to faith to see whether or not I'm going to make it. Next thing I know, I was just bobbing up and down, and then so it went and finished the swim. Unfortunately, though, I was 10 minutes. It took me 10 minutes too long to finish the swim, so I wasn't able to get to the bike. But knowing where I came from, like where I'm drowning, like he mentioned, I can only swim half the pool length and like freak out and stop. To put in perspective, 1,500 meters used to take me 3 hours.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
These days, 1,500 may take me 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huge
Major improvement.
improvement.
Yeah. But I gotta tell you one thing that I'm like, she called me that day. I remember she called me that day and she's crying on the other side. And I told her, I was like, girl, I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. this was one of the things that we were going to be expecting if you couldn't get over that portion of the race. And so, but you still need to run me 13 miles. And she did. And I'm like, she did. She was crying. She's like, okay, okay, go do it. And I'm like, okay, I need to suck it up. Let's go. And she did it. So I'm proud of you. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and let's talk a bit about after that, we had to talk about goals. I was like, all right, what are the goals for you? So, um, we went over that and it was a great plan for that
Mm-hmm.
year because later that year she did Augusta and
Yes.
then she did her first Ironman from it took it from January to the end of the year to do her first Ironman and she crushed it. So so proud of you. Now let's go ahead and talk about goals because that's going to be important for this new season for beginner triathletes, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what are what are the key things that you think it's important for goal settings?
Sure. One of the biggest one is defining your why. Why are you even racing in the first place? And what's going to be the major race that you're looking forward to? And then kind of see like does it even excite you in the first place? Does it stretch you? Does it give you like the skill set that you need? Or is it because it's tied to like a it's just tied to commemorating a relative might have done that race and you wanted to do the same thing. And so really figuring out your why is very important because it would help you like go through the entire training block with that keeping in mind that that's really your goal and keeps you focused. um Believe me, there's going to be a lot of challenges along the way, and it's so much easier to like have excuses and why you can't show up for your training, but that why is going to pull you through, help you go through your obstacles, and not even worry whether or not you're going to show up to training or not.
Right, good. And I'm glad you mentioned that because your why is going to drive you through the specific kind of workouts that you need to do to make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then during that process, you need to um, make short goals because sometimes when we make some big gigantic goals, they forget that it's a process and
Mm-hmm.
we have to start small. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, this is the big picture, but then let's break it down of how I'm going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when have to start putting some measurable short-term goals to get to the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
And then and it has to be challenging, don't you think?
Yes.
Because you can't be at a plateau the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I tell my athletes, I'm like, you won't plateau with me if you follow the program.
Mm-hmm.
But if you try to do stuff on your own and you don't have anyone to hold you reliable, because I got to tell you, we are the first ones to make excuses for ourselves and for not to do things.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that you know, make sure that we have someone that accounts us for it.
Mm-hmm.
Be with the coach, be with the tri team. You need to hold everyone responsible for doing them
Mm-hmm.
or not doing the work. Don't you think?
Yes. And it's especially important for to have someone hold you accountable who has already have done it too, because they can infuse you with the belief that there's a lot of challenges along the way that you where you don't see how to get to that level, and they'll help pull you through that. And so even talking about your dreams and goals is very important in who you talk to regarding that, because then because my coach, for example, Hector has helped me like believe in myself. Like I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. He's like, girl, you can go a lot faster than that. And I'm like, well, if you think so, I'll figure it out. I'll somehow get there. But because he believed that I can hold a certain pace, all I can do is just have faith that that is going to happen for me too.
And when you work with a coach, I'm like, you find that the coach is going to, one, hold you accountable. They're going to push you. You're not going to like the coach. I'm like, the coach, there's going to be moments that they're going to tell you something that you don't like to hear. and they're going to be realistic with you. They're not going to sugarcoat it. And I got to tell you, when people sugarcoat things, I'm like, I understand. I'm like, okay, I want to do this for magic and happiness, but there comes the moment that you're grinding. You have to push through the darkness, and it's not all happy thoughts and things. And that's when we drop the ball sometimes, and that's when you need the coach to says, look, what the heck are you doing? You
Mhm.
know, they know us, they get to
Mhm.
see us, and they see you when you're pushing, they see you when you're getting lazy, they see you in all aspects, and that's why I believe it's so important to have accountability. So
Yes. And
uh,
also like remembering what the role of the coach is, because they're out there to like make sure that you're the best athlete that you can be. And remembering that really helps any constructive criticisms that you may have, to put in perspective that hey, they are, making sure that whatever tips that they're giving me is the best for me, so I should just follow it instead of like thinking that they're just doing that just to criticize me. And that was like one of the major shifts that I made sure to secure like in my first Ironman training block, was that remembering always to myself when I'm having a hard time. Remember, coach is giving me all these advice because he has the best interest for me as an athlete, and that's what makes him an awesome coach. So just having to keep that in the back of my mind too, because it can get really tough.
yeah, no, it does me. I'm like, after racing for what, 22 years now, and it's like, wow, time flies,
Mhm.
and I tell you, as a coach, I continue evolving and growing and learning,
Mhm.
because there's coaches out there that they think they know it all, and no, we can have to continue to evolve with society, because people change, people are not the same, people are different, and you have to modify, and you have to, you know learn to work with them, and they need to learn tough love sometimes. So
Mhm.
it's crazy. But you know what? On that line, for those who don't have that outline, so we want to share with you a great strategy to implement when one's setting some goals. For example, um, when you explaining the type of races for the season, you have like A, B, and C races.
Mhm.
Um, let's go over each category.
Sure.
And so I'm like, in which you can identify, because when you look, I'm like, start making your schedule, you look, all right, this is how much, I'm like, how much time I have left, the amount of months, and the amount of races that I want to do, because you need to have a calendar and for to plan this out. So let's talk about the difference between A races, B races, and C races. So what is your C race? Let's talk about A race first, because we have to pick that big race of the year.
Yeah, so for this year, my A race is going to be the national championships in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
All right, perfect. So we're going to use that as a benchmark. So we're going to set that on the calendar. Okay, this is where she's at now, what she's going to be shooting for. Now, that main race that we have, I'm like, all right, let's see. Do we have other main races for the year? If you're an advanced athlete or a professional, you could have several A races for the year. But if you're just starting off, what that A race should be at least 6 to 7 months away, so you to have a proper base, a proper build, time for recovery, not to be rushing into these competitions. That when many people try to rush and short time, one, you won't be able to complete it, and then you'll get injured, and that's the last thing we want. So you want to have some supporting races to help you get
Mhm.
ready mentally, physically. So we call them.
The B race and C races.
Okay, B races. Okay, and those B races could be like an Olympic distance or a
Mhm.
shorter distance, like you're trying off,
Mhm.
and to use that as a benchmark during training. What like we've used several of those races last year, because last year
Mhm.
we were doing a lot of short course. We did several sprints before
Mhm.
leading into the Olympic, and that helped you significantly.
Mhm.
So don't you think? How did you feel? Were those races leading into your big race for you?
Yeah, so for example, one of my weaknesses is transitions. So those B races actually help me figure out what to do during those transitions so I can make them a little shorter and really hone in into my fueling and hydration as well. Those are like some of the weaknesses that I had to work with. And what's great with those types of supporting races is you get to test out a lot of strategies that your coach is working with you on, without having so much. And sometimes you end up doing a podium, but that's just kind of like an icing on the cake. It's more about like well is your how well is your training coming on, your conditioning, and what kind of skill sets are you building along the way, which is why it's important to have supporting races as well.
Oh, perfect. Because I got to tell you, you have to practice because, sometimes when we try to practice on our own, it's not the same when you have the pressure of everyone else around you.
Yeah.
There's so many stress factors, you know, literally. You're going to try and do a swim practice and then just get on the bike. When was the last time you did that? I'm like, unless you have access to a pool and your bike trainer's right there.
Hmm.
But when you have some, the people surrounding you, the energy changes you.
Hmm.
It could cause many stress. It could slow you down. You may be disoriented. So I believe these races are key. And it's but get into those cycling races and those um, running events and high rocks, why not?
Hmm.
Because you need it, especially those sea races are great just to tap in, just to see where you're at and have fun,
Hmm.
because when you do the sport it's about having fun as well.
Yeah. At the
So
end of the day, you have to have fun. That's the entire point of you even putting in the time and doing all of this, to help enhance your lifestyle as well. But that's a really great point that during the races, especially the sporting races, it kind of help you figure out how you're going to handle the stress and pressure along the way. I've made a million mistakes, and that's how you learn very quickly.
I was like, there's moments I've taken video, I'm like, Jan, what are you doing? And she's like, and I'm like, girl, what are you doing? Oh, it's
Yeah.
crazy. But you know what? And that's the best thing about this sport is that you get to have fun and you get to practice, you get to hang out with friends, and it's part of a community. So
Yeah. And you get to meet new people.
yes, you do. So one key thing that it's very important is integrating your goals with your training.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's when your coach will hold you accountable, but you have to make sure that you're realistic with your goals.
Hmm.
And it's like, look, you want to get at least shave off 20 to 30 seconds per mile on the run. You have to make sure that your diet is on point. You have
Hmm.
to make sure that you're pushing the efforts like you're supposed to. Make sure that you have a good work to rest ratio and not that you're creating too much fatigue. And I got to tell you, the one thing greatest factors is when you work with a coach, your coach is like looking like, how are you adapting to the efforts?
Hmm.
And sometimes we get aggravated. They're like, why is he giving me the same workout? Because you're not giving me the result that I want.
Yes.
And even though, because I know you could push a little bit harder.
Hmm.
There's been weeks I've said to some athletes, you know what, we're gonna do the same workouts you did this past week.
Hmm.
I just need you to push a little bit harder.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, yeah, because I know they could give me a little bit more. And when they have that extra push,
Hmm.
you know. But when you don't have someone holding you accountable, you're gonna be like, yeah, I think I did great. But when you get out there in the races and you smoked, you're just like, okay, hello, that's
Yeah.
on you. So, one key thing you also brought apart that on the there are moments that you've been through having an injury. How important it is, like, you need to make sure that you're pay attention to your recovery, but sometimes we are stubborn. Aren't we? We know who you're talking about. We tell you, look, go for an easy run. And then you're like, oh, but my hamstring is pulled, but I think I could go for a 10-mile run. I was like, Jan, why are you doing that? I was like, okay, this is the best ones. She got hit. She was attacked by a squirrel.
On a
Squirrel
bike.
on the bike. No, literally, the squirrel took her down. And
I
then,
flew through my bike.
yeah, and then she's all broken up, beating him up. She's like, and then that was Saturday.
And it had stitches.
Stitches, horrible. Comes Monday, conditioning at 5 a.m. Who shows up at 5:10? Shan. And I'm like, woman, go home. What are you doing? And I was like, but yeah, so, there's moments that you're going to have some setbacks and you
Hmm.
have to look back and then you have to be like, all right. And your coach will always tell you, like, look, I'm like, you need to back off. You need to push a little bit more. But at the same time, we have to listen to our coach when they says, look, you're going a little cray cray. So
Yeah, I'm one of those people who has a tendency to overtrain a little bit more, just because I love to train and I love to push myself. So it's not a matter of like whether or not I'm going to do the training. It's more like am I doing too much? And Coach Hector has really helped me dial some things down, only because like I'm not recovering enough. Like I was not able to like be able to perform in some of the paces is asking me, and that's actually like lowering my performance. So keeping in mind again, as I said about me, keeping in mind that he has just have the best interest for me as an athlete, I have to remember like, oh no, he's telling me to not to do that only because like so I can perform better.
And then I'm like, she's stubborn. Okay. And like, she doesn't realize that she posts shit on social media. And it's like, if I'm not going to see it. So I'm scrolling and I was like, why is she climbing? Oh, she fell down from the wall. Okay, great. No wonder she's injured. No wonder she's not recovering enough. I tried to go swimming or do some pull-ups or something. She said, I can't do it because my arms are tired. I'm like, why? I was mountain climbing. I was like,
Oh yeah, that's when I was rock climbing. Yeah.
yes. So I was like, woman. So and don't if you don't do shit and don't expect us not to find out. Don't post it on social media because we will find out. All right. So let's go over. Finishing off quickly. You brought up one key thing is about mental training techniques during your triathlon training. Why do
Mhm.
you think that that's important?
Yeah, because let's say you're doing an Ironman, the bike especially, it's 112 miles, and along the way, there comes a point where no one's going to cheer for you. Yeah, you may have people passing by you, and there's people around you, the other athletes, but you're on your own in terms of like the mental game, and it's something like how you talk to yourself is very important. Like, how are you cheering yourself on? How are you handling situations when unexpected things happen? And a lot of that has to deal with like training. During training, like when there's rain outside, how are you using that as a benefit for you? Because during races, it's going to rain, or one of your races is going to rain, and one of your races is going to be cold. But how are you going to be able to utilize that to benefit you instead?
Awesome. And I gotta tell you, especially visualization is such a key
Mhm.
thing because sometimes we don't see ourselves performing at the level, and we hold ourselves back,
Yes.
from achieving this because sometimes we want to believe we could do it, but we don't see ourselves doing it. And it's like the laws of attraction.
Yeah.
You want to believe that you're capable of doing, but you have to try. You have to put in the work, and many people don't. So, but those are key things that I do. I personally have implemented in my sessions. You know, especially on the bike when you're just by yourself and you have to put in those 4 hours on the bike ride. You're there and you're with your head is down and you're just pushing and
Hmm.
grinding, and like sometimes it's hard, but you have to take yourself there to that um pull yourself out of that dark space. So
Oh yes. Yeah.
yeah. All right.
Sometimes those 6 hour rides can get into your head for sure.
Well, let's wrap this up. It has been an amazing first podcast that we've had. I'm talking about goals. And, just to do a quick recap, key things that we want to talk about, remind when we, about our goal settings is specificity, that make sure that our workouts are going towards what we're training for.
Hmm.
Make sure that we have measurable goals that we go from 4 to 6 week basis because it depends how consistent you are with your training. It
Hmm.
takes what 21 days. That's 3 to 4 weeks based
Hmm.
upon how consistent you are with your training and listening to your coach. We talked about selecting races.
Hmm. Selecting races and making sure to figure out your why. Why are you doing the race in the first place?
Exactly, because we're like, and don't get, don't be a quitter. There's gonna be moments it's gonna get hard, and you can stop. I'm like, and that's one thing I try to with all my athletes. You have to like push. If this is if you pronounce it and you say it and this is my new why, you can't give up. And that's one thing I don't believe in. I was like, you say something, do it. It's,
Hmm.
you know. All right,
Yeah,
awesome. And then
definitely.
implementing your goals into training. Make sure you're doing workouts that will help you achieve those goals, and make sure you're communicating with your coach.
Hmm.
And then the last thing we talked about mental training techniques.
Yes.
Which ones do you prefer, or do you prefer for yourself?
For me, I like to do certain like skill sets, pick up certain skill set I really want to hone in and focus on that and be very intentional on what I want to do for that particular training. Like you mentioned, visualization is key. And then visualizing it ahead of time so that when I'm doing training, I get to test out like whether or not I match that certain
Good.
visualization.
Good. Good. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, this was our first podcast, and I got to tell you, the setting is kind of awkward because it's our first try. So I'm like, this is a great try. So I would like to thank Jan for joining me today at Coffee Time with Coach Torres, and I will see you next time.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Take care,
Bye.
guys. Bye.